Bebe, thanks indeed for joining us. Before we get into the actual context of the interview, I just want to get a sense of what does Talent Talks do?
Sure. Thanks, Devin, for having me on the show. So Talent Talks is a platform, and it's also a project where we are focused on curating quality stories from around the continent that talk about what Africa is doing and the good news story, if you like. So especially in corporate or, if you like, business spaces, we focus on 7 themes: doing business in Africa, authentic leadership, what we call African excellence, which is those stories of, we call them hero stories, people just making a difference by the quality of what they do. We also look at learning and innovation, well-being in the workplace, and a few others. Mm-hmm. The idea around Talent Talks is the more we tell these stories, the more we change the narrative from inside out around what Africa is and what we're able to do, especially, again, in the business and corporate spaces.
So let me come in there, if I can. I mean, you've bemoaned how we don't convey stories of excellence that were born in Africa. And,
yes.
Those stories could become global best practice for multinationals. But why hasn't that taken off?
Great question, Devin. And I think I was reflecting earlier today that it's probably because of the history of how we as Africa, if you like, come into the corporate space or in the business space. A lot of our traditions are inherited, and our position historically has been one of recipient and not giver. I think as we start to reshape who we are and how we show up in the global space, we also need to shake off some of these old inhibitions, if you like, and be much bolder about the contributions that we're making, just, from a brain trust perspective, if nothing else. As that grows and develops, we need to become stronger about telling the story.
We talk about improving growth rates and development, but yet prospects for citizens in some of these countries that are actually growing fast in terms of the economy, those prospects are next to zero. What's the role of corporates to actually assess and make a difference in that?
Yeah, again, a great question. I think one of the biggest drivers of stability and that growth that you talk about is the opportunity for wealth to trickle into creating a sustainable middle class, and also hopefully trickle even further down and start to give some real stability in the working class populations. And I think that's where corporates have a good opportunity, whether it's in formal work or stretching the sort of business space beyond formal work into the so-called gig economy. And I'll argue that in Africa we've been doing it, but that's where corporate really has a role. It's the opportunity to make sure, by providing salaries or by providing opportunities to small businesses, to entrepreneurs, that there is a trickle-down effect, so that the wealth is not kept in a few hands, but is spread in a sort of systemic, structured way as much as possible.
So we've got an agreement that's on the brink of being implemented, and perhaps that would bring that harmonious tone that you talk about. The Africa Free Trade Agreement that I talk about. I mean, it will make trade easier, cheaper. How far can that take us in bringing the image you speak of?
Yeah. Look, I think, again, with corporates, it's probably going to be something welcomed. One of the big barriers to trade in Africa is that we have so many different trade regimes, we have so many different tax regimes, etc. And the opportunity that this would bring, if it is signed off, is some harmony and just, ease of doing business across the continent, especially, again, for big business, multinationals or even homegrown African businesses that work in multiple countries. It's not having to deal with these multiple systems, regimes, tax systems, financial systems, etc., but having some synchronicity that makes the opportunity for value optimization more real. So that, I think, is a very practical hope and a very practical realization that will be brought. Of course, if that also moves into the idea of ease of mobility, labor mobility, that is even another opportunity for this collaboration and for the good news, if you like, to manifest much quicker.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That was Bebe Adeoye of Talent Talks. Thanks indeed for chatting to us.